Gunfire cracked through the morning air. A single shot, precise and deadly. Smoke curled from the barrel of Ethan Morgan's Colt 45, the silver-worked grip warm against his calloused palm. The outlaw before him dropped to his knees, surprise frozen on his unshaven face before slumping forward into the dirt. "Drop it!" Etchen barked, his voice carrying the command of a man accustomed to being obeyed. Two more bandits wheeled from behind the weathered boards of the saloon, guns already clearing leather. With the fluid motion of muscle memory that 15 years hadn't erased, Ethan pivoted, firing twice. The second outlaw staggered backward, clutching his shoulder. The third froze, pistol half drawn, eyes widening with recognition. "Morgan! Jesus Christ, it's Morgan!" He raised his hands, trembling. "Don't shoot! I didn't know she was yours!" Ethan kept his gun leveled, eyes cold as Dakota winter. "She ain't mine. No person belongs to another." The wounded outlaw coughed, spitting blood. You served with Reynolds. Why protect an Apache?" The question hung in the dust-laden air as townsfolk peered from windows and doorways, not one stepping into the street to help. Ethan's weathered face betrayed nothing, but the grip on his Colt tightened until his knuckles whitened. Because some things are worth standing for. Dry Ridge perched on the edge of civilization like a vulture on a fence post. One main street, a dozen businesses, and enough sin to fill a preacher's sermon for a month of Sundays. Ethan Morgan hadn't planned on stopping, but his Appaloosa stallion, Gunner, needed rest. And his supplies had dwindled to coffee grounds and 3 bullets. Now those bullets were spent, and his plans had changed. He secured his horse at the general store's hitching post, dust-coating his trail-worn duster. At 45, Ethan carried his years like ammunition, carefully with purpose. The war between the states had claimed his youth. The expansion westward had hardened him. The scar tissue across his left shoulder ached with the memory of Gettysburg, where a Confederate sharpshooter had nearly punched his ticket to the hereafter. His eyes, gray as gunmetal, scanned the street with the precision of a man who'd spent years watching the horizon for threats. Even in peacetime, Ethan never truly stopped being a soldier. The commotion drew him before he'd registered the sound, jeering voices behind the Desert Rose Saloon. Something primal in the tone, predatory, made the hair on his neck stand at attention. He'd heard it before, in camps after battles, when victory made men forget their humanity. What he found sickened even him, a man who'd seen the depths of wartime depravity. A young woman stood chained to a hitching post, her wrists raw and bleeding above her head. Her buckskin dress hung in tatters, dirt and blood crusting the torn edges. Despite her condition, her posture remained proud, defiant. She was Apache, unmistakable in her features, in the intricate beadwork still clinging to what remained of her clothing. But it wasn't her heritage that made Ethan's blood run cold. It was the silver embellishments on her chains, the distinctive pattern of the 7th Cavalry, Reynolds' unit, the same unit that had pacified Apache settlements 2 years prior. The same unit whose actions had driven Ethan to turn in his commission and retreat to his hardscrabble ranch. $50 for a night with her, a pot-bellied man announced to the gathered crowd. She's wild, but we've broken wilder. The woman's eyes met Ethan's across the distance. No pleading, no weakness, just calculation, measuring whether he represented a new threat or possible salvation. What's going on here, Carson? Ethan addressed the town sheriff, who lounged against the wall, thumbs hooked in his belt. Sheriff Carson straightened, his hand drifting toward his gun before recognition dawned. Morgan? Thought you'd sworn off civilization. His smirk revealed tobacco-stained teeth. Just cleaning up the territory. This one killed a soldier, stabbed him with his own knife when he tried to bring her in. For what crime? Carson shrugged. Does it matter? She's Apache. Reynolds wants her, and what the captain wants, he gets in these parts. Ethan stepped closer, noting how the woman tensed, preparing herself. Up close, he saw intelligence in her eyes, and the kind of strength that suffering couldn't diminish. "I'll take her." Carson's eyebrows shot upward. "You gone soft, Morgan? Or just lonely out on that ridge?" Ethan's hand never strayed toward his gun, but something in his stillness made the sheriff take a half step back. "Name your price." After a tense negotiation that depleted Ethan's cattle sale earnings, he cut her down himself, using his own knife to sever the leather bindings. She collapsed forward, legs buckling after hours strung up. Ethan caught her, feeling the tremors running through her body, not fear but pain and exhaustion. "Can you ride?" he asked quietly. "I will ride," she answered, her English accented but clear. As he helped her onto Gunner, Sheriff Carson called out, "Reynolds won't like this, Morgan. He's been hunting her for weeks. Says she stole something valuable." Ethan mounted behind the woman, one arm steadying her waist. "Send him my regards." Carson's parting words followed them out of town. "Your conscience will get you killed one day, Morgan." Ethan clicked to Gunner, urging him into a steady trot away from Dry Ridge. "Maybe," he muttered to himself, "but at least I'll still have one." The Morgan homestead crowned a rocky rise overlooking the valley, positioned with a soldier's eye for defensibility. A two-room cabin of hand-hewn pine, a corral, and a small barn comprised Ethan's kingdom. Nothing fancy, but the 8-foot fence around the property and the strategically placed firing port spoke to a man who valued preparation over comfort. Inside, Ethan eased the Apache woman onto his only chair while he stoked the fire. She watched his every movement, alert despite her weakened state. "What's your name?" he asked, heating water in a dented coffee pot. "Nizhoni." She spoke the words softly, as if testing whether she should share even this much. "Ethan Morgan." He retrieved a wooden box from beneath his bed, medical supplies salvaged from his army days. "I need to clean those wounds." Nizhoni's eyes narrowed. "Why help me?" Ethan soaked a clean cloth in the warm water. "I've seen enough suffering. You were a soldier, with them." Not a question. She'd recognized the way he moved, the precision of his actions. "Not anymore." He held up the cloth. "This will hurt." She didn't flinch as he cleaned the abrated skin on her wrists, nor when he poured whiskey over the deeper cuts. Only when he began threading a needle did she speak again. "The silver on the chains. You recognized it." Ethan's hands paused momentarily. "Reynolds leads the 7th Cavalry. I served with him during the war. Different man then, or maybe I just didn't see clearly." While he worked, stitching a deep gash on her arm with careful, even sutures, Nizhoni studied his cabin. Sparse furnishings, military precision in their arrangement, a single bed, a table, 2 chairs, a Winchester rifle mounted within easy reach of the door, a stack of books beside the bed, unusual for a frontier rancher. When he finished, she surprised him by asking, "Why do you live alone, far from others?" Ethan packed away his medical supplies. "Found I prefer the company of honest silence to dishonest words." He offered her the bed, preparing to sleep on the floor near the fireplace. As darkness claimed the valley, Nizhoni watched him from beneath the woolen blanket, measuring him with those calculating eyes. "They will come for me," she said finally. "Reynolds will not stop." "I know." Ethan checked his Colt before setting it beside his makeshift bedroll. "Get some rest. Tomorrow will be soon enough to decide what's next." But they both knew there was no next to decide. By helping her, Ethan had already chosen his path. The only question was how steep the price would be. Dawn broke with Ethan already awake, having slept fitfully through memories of cannon fire and screaming men. He found Nizhoni examining his rifle, running her fingers over the mechanism with surprising familiarity. "You know firearms." Again, not a question. "My husband taught me before the soldiers killed him." She set the rifle down carefully. "I can help defend your home." Ethan poured coffee into tin cups. "First, you need to heal." "There is no time." Nizhoni accepted the coffee, her movements more fluid than the day before. Reynolds sent men to find me because I took something from him. Something that proves what he did to my people was not an accident of war, but planned murder. Ethan's cup paused halfway to his lips. What did you take? His orders. Written proof that he knew where our settlement was before the attack, that we had no weapons, that we had offered peace. Her voice remained steady, but rage burned in her eyes. He called it removal of indigenous obstacles to mineral exploitation. They found silver in our mountains. The revelation hit Ethan like physical pain. He'd suspected after his brother Robert had written to him about troubling actions by the 7th Cavalry. But Robert's subsequent death in what was reported as an Apache raid had ended his inquiries. My brother, Ethan said slowly, was a lieutenant under Reynolds. He wrote to me, concerned about orders he'd received. 3 weeks later, he was dead. Reynolds claimed it was your people. Nizhoni's eyes widened slightly. When? Last spring, near Broken Arrow Creek. There was no raid. Her words fell like stones. A soldier came to our settlement alone, seeking peace talks. He showed us papers, warned us to leave. The next day, Reynolds came with 40 men. No one was spared except those few of us who were gathering herbs in the hills. The implications settled between them. Robert hadn't died in a raid. He'd been silenced by his own commander. Ethan's decision crystallized. Show me how to load the Winchester properly, he said, rising. We have work to do. By midday, Ethan had taught Nizhoni the finer points of his Colt, while she had shown him Apache techniques for moving silently through underbrush. Her strength returned with remarkable speed, her movements becoming more fluid, precise. As they scouted the perimeter of his property, Ethan spotted the signs: broken twigs, disturbed earth, a cigarette butt still fragrant with tobacco. Someone's watching, he murmured, dropping to one knee and examining the tracks. One man, heavy, favors his right leg. Nizhoni crouched beside him, her shoulder brushing his. Jackson, she whispered, Reynolds' tracker. He lost his leg's full use at Shiloh. Ethan's eyes narrowed. You know a lot about Reynolds' men. I listened for months before I took the papers. Knowledge is survival. She pointed to a distant ridge. He will be there, watching. Then let's pay him a visit. They circled wide, approaching Jackson's position from behind. The tracker had established a small camp in a natural depression, his horse tethered nearby. Through field glasses, he was monitoring Ethan's cabin. Ethan's approach was silent, a skill honed through years of necessity. The tracker didn't realize his presence until Ethan's Colt pressed against the base of his skull. Hello, Jackson. The tracker froze. Morgan, thought you'd washed out after the war. Stand up, slow. Jackson complied, his right leg dragging slightly. He was a bear of a man, bearded and scarred, with eyes that had seen too much killing to be disturbed by more. Reynolds know you're here? Ethan asked, keeping his gun steady. Jackson's laugh was a harsh bark. Captain's got a dozen men combing these hills. Figured you'd head for the fort, not hole up at your place. His eyes shifted to Nizhoni, who had emerged from the brush. She's pretty, I'll give you that, but not worth dying over, Morgan. What does Reynolds want? You know damn well, the papers she stole. They reach a federal marshal, and Reynolds hangs. Government's mighty touchy about unauthorized operations against peaceful indigenous peoples these days. Jackson's smile revealed missing teeth. Course, it ain't just the papers now. It's her testimony. Only eyewitness left. Ethan's finger tensed on the trigger. And my brother? Robert Morgan. Was that Reynolds too? Something like regret flickered in Jackson's eyes. Robert was a good man. Tried to stop it, warned the Apache settlement. Reynolds couldn't have that. The confirmation struck Ethan like a physical blow. He'd suspected, but hearing it laid bare sent rage coursing through him. Reynolds will be coming himself, Jackson continued. Tomorrow, probably, with enough men to turn that little ranch of yours into kindling. His eyes darted between them. You could let me go. Give me the papers. I'll tell Reynolds she's dead. You're clear. Nizhoni stepped forward. He is lying. He would betray us before reaching the valley. Jackson's expression confirmed her assessment. With a fluid motion, Ethan brought his pistol down on the tracker's temple, dropping him unconscious. "Bind him," Ethan instructed. "We need what he knows." By nightfall, they had transformed Ethan's homestead into a fortress. Rifle ports reinforced, water barrels filled, ammunition distributed to strategic points. Jackson, bound in the barn, had revealed under questioning that Reynolds commanded 12 men, all combat veterans with orders to retrieve the documents and eliminate witnesses. "They'll come at dawn," Ethan said, checking the sight on his Winchester. "From the east, with the sun at their backs." Nizhoni nodded, adjusting the borrowed belt that held Ethan's second Colt. "We cannot defeat 12 armed men." "No," Ethan agreed, "but we can hold them off." He withdrew a folded paper from his shirt. "I sent a writer to Fort Laramie this morning. Lieutenant Davis was my spotter at Gettysburg. He owes me. If the papers are genuine, he'll bring federal marshals." "If they arrive in time," Nizhoni added softly. Their eyes met across the table, understanding passing between them. Survival until reinforcements arrived was a thin hope, but it was all they had. "Get some rest," Ethan said. "I'll take first watch." Instead, Nizhoni moved to stand beside him at the window. "My father taught that a warrior is measured by the battles they choose." Her hand brushed his arm. "You chose this battle when you had no obligation." Ethan's gaze remained on the darkening landscape. "Robert was my brother. I owe him this much. Is that the only reason?" The question hung between them. Ethan turned, really looking at her, not as someone to protect, but as an equal who had fought her own battles. "No," he admitted. "Some things are worth standing for." She nodded once, accepting his answer. Together they watched night claim the valley, the silence between them more eloquent than words. The attack came with first light, as Ethan had predicted. Reynolds' men approached in a skirmish line, using the terrain for cover. But Ethan had anticipated their tactics and positioned accordingly. His first shot dropped the point man at 300 yards, a clean hit that sent the others scrambling for better cover. "Impressive," Nizhoni murmured from her position at the south window. "Colt ready. Spend enough time killing. You get good at it," Ethan replied grimly, working the Winchester's lever action. For 20 minutes they maintained a disciplined defense, making each shot count. 3 of Reynolds' men were down, another wounded, but the attackers were tightening their circle, and ammunition was limited. A bullet splintered the window frame inches from Ethan's face. He ducked, cursing. "They're flanking us, heading for the barn." Nizhoni moved to cover the rear door. "Jackson, if they free him, our position is compromised." A decision crystallized. "Cover me," Ethan ordered, checking his Colt. "I'm going to the barn. When I signal, lay down suppressing fire toward that ridge." Before she could protest, Ethan slipped out the back door, staying low behind the water trough. Nizhoni's accurate fire from the cabin window kept the attackers' heads down as he sprinted to the barn side door. Inside, Jackson was working his bonds against a nailhead. He froze when Ethan entered. "They're coming for you," Jackson said. "Reynolds himself is with them. You're dead, Morgan." Ethan checked the barn's defenses. "Maybe, but I'm taking him with me." A shout from outside announced the attacker's approach. Ethan positioned himself behind a stall divider, gun ready. The barn door crashed open, and 2 of Reynolds' men burst in. Ethan fired twice. The first man dropped. The second got off a wild shot that tore through Ethan's side before a third bullet from Nizhoni, who had followed against instructions, ended the threat. "Stubborn woman," Ethan grunted, pressing a hand to his bleeding side. Nizhoni tore a strip from her dress, binding the wound quickly. "Stubborn man," Jackson laughed from his bound position. "Touching, but Reynolds has 8 men left. You're still outgunned." As if summoned by his name, a commanding voice called from outside. "Morgan, send out the Apache woman and the papers. You have my word you'll walk away." Ethan exchanged a look with Nizhoni. Captain Reynolds, he called back. Good to hear your voice. Been meaning to discuss my brother with you. A pause. Robert died a hero, Morgan. Apache ambush. Nothing I could do. Funny, that's not what Jackson says. Another pause. Longer this time. Jackson's a drunk and a liar, but I'm a reasonable man. Keep the papers if you want. Just send out the woman. She killed one of my men. Justice demands an answer. Ethan's wound throbbed, blood seeping through Nizhoni's makeshift bandage. Tell me about the silver mines, Captain. The ones on Apache land. The silence that followed confirmed everything. When Reynolds spoke again, his voice had hardened. You always were too righteous for your own good, Morgan. Like your brother. Burn them out, boys. A flaming arrow arced through the air, landing on the cabin's roof. More followed, targeting the dry wood of the barn. We need to move, Ethan said, grimacing as he stood. Back to the cabin. There's a root cellar. The sound of distant bugle calls interrupted him. Reynolds' men faltered, turning toward the valley entrance. Cavalry, Jackson muttered. 7th? Ethan smiled through his pain. 4th. Lieutenant Davis, if I'm not mistaken. Riders appeared on the ridge. 24 blue-coated cavalrymen, led by a tall officer whose arm extended in command. Reynolds' men scattered, but the disciplined cavalry cut off their retreat. In the confusion, a single figure broke through toward the barn. Captain Reynolds himself, face contorted with rage, pistol raised. The papers, he shouted. Where are they? Nizhoni stepped forward, placing herself between Reynolds and the wounded Ethan. Gone. Sent to Fort Laramie yesterday. Reynolds' gun swung toward her. Then you're the only evidence left. Ethan lunged despite his wound, knocking Nizhoni aside as Reynolds fired. The bullet caught Ethan in the shoulder, spinning him against the barn wall. Through a haze of pain, he saw Nizhoni drive his own knife into Reynolds' arm, forcing him to drop his gun. Reynolds howled, drawing a second pistol with his left hand. Before he could fire, a rifle shot cracked from the doorway. Reynolds staggered, surprise replacing rage as he looked down at the spreading red stain on his chest. Lieutenant Davis stepped into the barn, rifle still raised. That's enough, Captain. Reynolds collapsed to his knees. This is military business. These people interfered with pacification operations. Murder isn't a military operation, Davis replied coldly, and the federal marshals with me are quite interested in your unauthorized campaigns against peaceful settlements. He nodded to Ethan. Your brother would be proud, Morgan. As federal marshals secured the remaining attackers, Nizhoni helped Ethan back to the cabin, where an army surgeon attended his wounds. Will you testify? Ethan asked her as the surgeon worked. About what happened to your people. Nizhoni's expression remained unreadable. If there is justice to be had, I will seek it. She glanced around the cabin, at the home Ethan had built. What will you do when this is finished? Ethan winced as the surgeon extracted the bullet from his shoulder. Keep ranching, I suppose. This land still needs tending. Alone? The question held more meaning than its simple syllables suggested. Ethan looked at her, really looked, seeing not just the strength that had survived impossible odds, but the woman who had fought beside him when she could have fled. That would depend, he said carefully, on whether I had a partner willing to share the work. Nizhoni's smile was slight but genuine. I have experience with difficult land. And difficult men. The surgeon finished his work, bandaging Ethan's wounds. Outside, the federal marshals were leading away the captured men, justice in motion after too long delayed. It won't be easy, Ethan warned. The territory holds grudges. Nothing worthwhile comes easily. Nizhoni handed him a cup of water. My people have a saying, a warrior is not measured by how many battles they win, but by which battles they choose to fight. Lieutenant Davis entered, removing his hat respectfully. Morgan, the marshals need statements from both of you. There'll be a trial in Fort Laramie. He glanced between them, noting something in their shared gaze. But it can wait until you're stronger. After Davis left, silence settled in the cabin. Not the empty silence of loneliness that had defined Ethan's existence for years, but something fuller, charged with possibility. "You could have died today," Nizhoni said softly. "We all die eventually," Ethan replied. "The question is whether we stood for something that mattered first." Nizhoni nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Then we will stand together." 6 months later, Ethan Morgan stood on the porch of his expanded cabin, watching the sunset paint the valley gold. The homestead had changed. A larger garden now flourished with both traditional crops and Apache medicinal plants. A second corral housed horses brought by families passing through, seeking safe haven on their journey. Nizhoni emerged from the cabin, standing beside him at the rail. Together they had created something unexpected, a way station for displaced Apache families and weary veterans with nowhere else to go. Reynolds was gone, hanged for murder and conspiracy after a trial that had sent shockwaves through the territorial administration. Justice, while imperfect, had been served. "Rider coming," Nizhoni noted, nodding toward the trail. Ethan spotted the familiar figure of Lieutenant Davis, now captain after his testimony had helped convict Reynolds. "News from the east, probably," Ethan said. "Washington's been quiet too long." Nizhoni touched his arm, drawing his attention back to her. "My people say that a man is measured by the battles he chooses." "I just did what any man with honor would do," Ethan replied. Her smile held both warmth and wisdom. "That is why there are so few real men left, Morgan." As Davis approached, Ethan felt the weight of his past lightening. He had chosen his battle. He had found his place. And in a world where good men were increasingly rare, he had become something he never expected, a beacon for others seeking their own path to redemption. In the fading light of day, the last man of Dry Ridge prepared to welcome another traveler to a home built not just of wood and stone, but of courage, justice, and the quiet strength of two hearts that had found in each other what they thought lost forever: hope.